Hello guitar teachers and students, welcome back. So today we are starting a series on how to improvise classical music on the guitar. So I have no idea how popular this is going to be, probably not very, but as somebody who years ago went in search of this information and found basically nothing, it's important to me to make an effort to get it out there for the next person that goes in search of it. So yeah, without further ado, let's get into it. So starting out, we all want to be able to sit down and have something come out of the guitar that could pass for a soar etude on our very first try, but step one for us is just aimed at getting very comfortable with two chords, C and G7. And we're only going to play notes that exist in those two chords, and we're going to keep it in first position. So looking at the C chord, our notes in a C chord are C, E, and G. So on the bass notes, we have the low E, the G, the C, this E, and then of course on the treble strings, we have open G, and then C, and then open E, and then high G. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to use this low C as our universal bass note, so no other bass notes exist right now. And we're just going to practice doing little melodic things over the top of that, so something like... Next we have the G7, which consists of the notes G, B, D, and F. So on the bass strings we have this low F, and then the G, and then the B, open D, and then F, and then on treble strings we have the open G, open B, D, F, and G. And just like with the last chord, we're going to use the root note as our one and only bass note, so this low G, and then practice doing little melodic things over it. So something like... So you'll probably notice that it sounds a little bit tense, not very pretty, which is to be expected. Dominant chords aren't very pretty. The whole point of them really is to create tension that gets resolved into the next chord. So if your G7 stuff doesn't sound pretty, you're probably doing it right. So once you're comfortable with these two in isolation, the next thing is going to be to practice going back and forth between them and shooting for something about 4 bars long. So something like... would be just fine. So when we get to this point, there are a few things to watch out for. So first of all, we need to think about voice leading to the extent that you don't want to play something like this, where it sounds like every time you switch chords, you're just starting the arpeggio over again like a scale. That's not particularly melodic. So what we want to do is when we switch chords, we want to switch to something nearby. So if we started out with that on the C chord, go into the G7, we could either stay on the G or go down to the F and do something like that. And that really smooths over the transition and makes it seem intentional rather than you're just playing a technical exercise or something like that. The next thing we need to watch out for is, typically when teaching this, a lot of students will come up with one thing that sounds good and just feel like they're done with it and they're ready to move on to the next step, which unfortunately could not be further from the truth. But it's understandable, right, in that we don't have a lot to work with. There are only 4 high notes that we have over the C chord, so struggling with creativity at this point is very typical. So when you find yourself at that point, not if, but when, I'd encourage you to play around with different rhythmic motifs. So in the example from, the beginning of the video, we had kind of this half quarter quarter motif, but we could also do something like quarter, eighth, eighth, quarter, quarter, and come up with something like this. We can also start to use some of the bass notes that we told ourselves earlier we weren't allowed to use. So maybe we want to use bass notes on beat 1 and 4, come up with something like this. And of course, playing around with different keys, time signatures, stuff like that will open up even more options for us. All right, so hopefully that's enough to get you started on your journey to improvising classical guitar. For a number of you, you'll get to this point and be ready to roll. For others, this may be your first attempt at trying to do anything creative regarding classical guitar, and maybe even your first attempt at, trying to play music that's not written out for you. If you're struggling, or just the type of person that likes to sit and really methodically plan things out, I've come up with a number of worksheets that I think will be a lot of help for you. They go through a few different guitar-friendly keys, different time signatures, lay out what chords to use and what the notes are in those chords, and then others get you started with some various rhythmic motifs and then give you space to create your own using those motifs. If you're interested in those, there is a link down in the description. They are very affordable. So thank you so much for watching. Remember to like, subscribe, leave a comment below. Let me know how you're faring on this journey. And we'll see you very soon for part 2. All right, take care.